What's going on, my fellow warriors? This is Musou Prince here with the beginning of a little video series that I wanted to do as a means to really talk about stuff within the video game community that I find interesting. For this episode of Royal Rambling, I wanted to talk about a new favorite I discovered on the PlayStation Store that has pushed itself up on my list of favorite games. Today I wanted to talk about Spacelords. Now, Spacelords is a free-to-play, mission-based, team-based third-person shooter. It has a character roster based around ability-specific heroes that are fit for certain jobs, kind of like how Overwatch or Paladins handles their characters. And the graphics and art style of the game is something I could explain only as the punk rock and steampunk genres adopting Borderlands as their own little baby sunshine. Yeah, if you love the insanity that Borderlands has, this game could have some familiarity to you. Now, the story itself is about a group of freedom fighters called the Raiders that want to free their planet from the clutches of several different factions. The main antagonistic faction being the human race's Hades division, who want to conquer the broken planet in the name of the human race. Some other antagonistic factions include the Mad Max-like War Dogs and the mechanistic hive mind of the Fifth Council. When it comes to the gameplay, I've never been more satisfied with fluid combat since Dynasty Warriors, let alone satisfying combat for a third-person shooter no less. Now, since it is a third-person shooter, you'll mainly find yourself using your character's primary weapon in tangent with your character's specific abilities that I believe Mercury Stream was able to find some great balance between. A great example is from my personal favorite, Lycus Dian. He has a shotgun pistol that has a really widespread shot that you'll need to get in close in order to do some big damage. His ability helps him to perfectly pull that off, as he is given a personal shield that he can even shoot through, allowing him to close the distance to use his weapon while not leaving him open to enemy attacks. Alongside the shooting, Spacelords also sports a rock-paper-scissors combat system. You've got your normal attacks, a grab, and a dodge that iconicize with attacks beating grabs, grabs beating dodges, and dodges beating attacks. There's even a last stand sequence that a playable character and certain elite enemies enter into that leave them vulnerable to melee attacks, where if a melee is performed on a vulnerable character, a special finisher will initiate that gives the finisher immunity for the move, full health, and a brief state of immunity once the move is done, really adding some intensity to the close quarters combat. Now, usually in order for these games to really stand out on the market, they need to have a unique feature to them. Well, Spacelords has that too, in the form of the Antagonist mode and a special gameplay mechanic called Aleph. Antagonist mode is where a single player takes on the role of the antagonist and invades other players' games to pretty much give them a rough time. And every single time an antagonist joined a game of mine, I always had fun trying to assess and counter whatever an enemy player has to try and throw at me. And as for Aleph, Aleph is a special substance that players can collect that are needed in order to perform things beneficial to the mission. But if you collect 5 Alephs, it'll give your character's mod cards an exceptional boost. Now, the missions isn't the only thing you can do in this game. Outside of the missions, you have a crafting function and a customization function that go hand in hand. You can craft new weapons as well as 2 mod cards, where one mod card is a faction-based card shared amongst a handful of characters, and the second mod card are character-specific. Once these are crafted, you can use them to customize your chosen raider/antagonist to your heart's content. Now that I've talked about what the game has to offer, let me talk about what I think are pros and cons of the game that I believe will matter to the consumers. Let's start with the pros. First off, the game is free to play, and it seems like Mercury Stream is going to try and support this game as long as there is enough of a community. The last big update they made prior to me recording this was 4 months ago. Next is that the game has a healthy roster of characters, sporting 19 characters each with their own unique gun, ability, and customization skills. The leveling up system is very standard and easy to follow. The more you level up, the more stuff you unlock in the game, like new heroes, new skills to craft, and new missions. Missions are simple, and the areas are well sized enough that you can easily get a hold of the map in a matter of minutes. AIs are competently challenged. The elite enemies are definitely tough, but you can find yourself getting killed by even the simplest of grunts if you're out of position. And finally, the game throws at you some interesting and fun bosses that you'll encounter throughout the game's campaigns. Now we move on to the cons. First off is how you unlock the characters. At the beginning of the game, you start with Herrick, Alicia, Dion, and Constantine, and you can only unlock more characters by leveling up. Now, that doesn't sound too bad, except the fact that you also have to purchase the characters with in-game currency once you level up enough to unlock them. That's too much, especially if there's a character that looks like you might like. As a segue from that, there is definitely excessive grinding in this game in order to get currencies, to unlock characters as well as craft things, but also to grind for materials that you need for crafting as well. Next is that the matchmaking needs some work. There are times where I was a raider and was invaded by an antagonist who had such a higher level and equipment than me, as well as vice versa when I'm an antagonist and facing against raiders who are higher level than me. Not sure if this is because of the matchmaking system itself, or if it's because of which part of the player base is active at that moment, and I just kinda got unlucky about that. A real annoying con is limited communication. This game doesn't support in-game mic chat, which really sucks, because this is a game where communication is key. Now there is an in-game communication system, but it's only to call out what objectives you're focusing on. There were still moments where I really wanted to say very specific callouts to allies, like where the antagonist is located, or to call out Aleph management. And finally are just some nitpicks that I had that aren't real deal breakers, but something that the game I feel really should have. Some of my nitpicks is not having an option to turn off antagonist encounters, and not having the option to enable crossplay, because I mean, let's admit it, sometimes us console players don't want to play with PC players sometimes, especially if it has to do with like player versus player stuff, and that has to go with the whole equipment difference and everything, and it's just something I don't really want to get into. So these nitpicks don't really affect me that much, but it's just me playing devil's advocate for the sake of people who decided to click on this video. To me, Spacelords is a quick-paced action shooter that I feel really has a lot of potential to stay around for a long time, improve many things upon what they got, and could be able to accumulate a great player base and community. I mean, the lore is intriguing, the characters are cool, and the missions, all in my opinion, are really fun. I mean, this is the first time I've ever played a game that has an escort mission that didn't make me want to blow my brains out. I highly recommend Spacelords to anyone who enjoys some tightly knit and in-depth combat with unique characters and an interesting art style. So, that's it for this episode's Royal Rambling. My name is Musou Prince, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Later, guys!